Sequences can be expressed in various forms. Today, we are going to look at one of those forms called recursive sequences. Be sure to fill in the notes as we go along. Go back and pause if you need to, or rewind the video if you need to. Consider whole sequence 5, 8, 11, 14, 17, and so on. What might the next number in the sequence be? Pause the video and answer the question. If you said 20, you were correct because it is a +3 pattern each time. The next part says describe the pattern using new term and old term. Then write a formula for whole sequence. In other words, we are asking you here, how do I get from an old term to a new term? If you think about that, we said it is a +3 pattern. We are taking the old term and adding 3 to each old term to get the new term. So old term plus 3 equals new term.
So here's the important part. We replace old term with a sub n minus 1. And we replace new term with a sub n. A sub n is the term we want to find. A sub n minus 1 is the term before it. We can't find any terms if we don't know where to start. So the other thing that we have to write in our formula is the starting value, or a sub 1. In this case, the first value in our sequence is 5. So a sub 1 equals 5.
Congrats! We just wrote our first recursive sequence. Pause the video and make sure you have any notes that you need before we continue. This is an example of a recursive sequence. In a recursive sequence, there are 2 key pieces of information that we need to be able to write it. The first thing we need to know is an initial value or a starting number that tells us where the sequence begins. The other thing we need to know is a formula, sometimes called a rule, or also a pattern, that tells how the new or the next term relates to the previous or the old term.
Let's take a look at some examples. See if you can answer the first question. What would be the next term in the sequence 81, 27, 9, 3, 1, and so on? Pause the video and try to figure it out.
The correct answer that we were looking for is 1/3. Now, what was the pattern or the rule that was used to find that next term?
Some of you may have said divide by 3. This is correct. However, when we write recursive sequences, we don't want to use division. We want to use multiplication. So what is the same as dividing by 3? The same would be multiplying by 1/3. So now, how do I write this recursive definition? First question, what's our starting value? Hopefully you're telling me 81. So a sub 1 equals 81. Write that down. For the next part, we know that the new term is equal to the old term times 1/3 because our rule is times 1/3. Therefore, a sub n equals a sub n minus 1 times 1/3. We can also write the recursive sequence in function notation. If it was in function notation, a sub 1 would be the same thing as f of 1. So that part would say f of 1 equals 81. The equation would say f of n equals f of n minus 1 times 1/3, where a sub n is the same thing as f of n, and a sub n minus 1 is the same thing as f of n minus 1.
You've come to the end of the first video. Go back and make sure you got all the notes that you needed. Rewatch anything you might need to rewatch, and answer the question provided on the next part of the Schoology page.
Created using Powtoon.